Logos for Second Century Stewardship, Science for America's National Parks, the National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior, the Schoodic Institute at Acadia National Park, the David Evans Shaw Family Foundation and the National Park Foundation appear. The logos give way to a variety of arrowheads appearing over a sunset. Words appear: Indigenous Archeology at Acadia National Park, Second Century Stewardship. A montage of scenic views from parks across the United States. Words appear: 2016 National Park Service Centennial. The rapid-fire imagery of views from the nation's parks continues.
In 2016, Americans celebrated the 100-year anniversary of our National Park Service, which oversees more than 400 park sites located on approximately 80 million acres across all 50 states.
The words "Find Your Park" appear, followed by a web link, findyourpark.com. The montage of park images continues.
These parks are renowned worldwide as special places and national treasures, attracting more than 300 million visits annually. While national parks are often best known for their grandeur and their beauty, they are much more than that. Beyond the beautiful scenery, parks offer exceptional opportunities to learn about our natural world and about our cultural heritage.
A signed photo of David Shaw with Interior Secretary Salazar appears.
As a presidential appointee to the National Park Foundation, amidst the National Park Centennial, I was inspired by the opportunity to expand the role of parks as classrooms and laboratories, and I created a program called Second Century Stewardship to help realize that vision.
A graphic appears with the words "Second Century Stewardship, Science Beyond the Scenery in Acadia National Park." Copyright 2016, David E. Shaw. Next, a graphic shows an aerial view of the United States. In the northeast, a star with the words Acadia National Park is visible on the map. This is followed by images from Acadia and a list of national parks.
Since its inception in Acadia National Park, Second Century Stewardship has worked with dozens of national parks and partner organizations to advance the next century of park science and stewardship by fostering a new generation of devoted scientists engaging the public in our work.
Scientists work in various parks.
A highlight for all of us involved in this pioneering program is the opportunity to interact with the talented scientists who are funded as Second Century Stewardship Fellows.
Dr. Bonnie Newsom walks with David Shaw on a dirt path in a wooded area.
In this video, we are delighted to focus on the work of Dr. Bonnie Newsom, an Indigenous archaeologist on the faculty of the University of Maine. Through her research, Bonnie, in her own words, seeks to humanize people in the past by exploring concepts of identity, style, social boundaries, and human agency. I've had the opportunity to visit archaeological sites with Bonnie to better understand the nature and importance of her work. For this video, we traveled with Bonnie to an important research site along Maine's Damariscotta River.
An aerial view of the river and its sandy shoreline. Next, Dr. Bonnie Newsom, Assistant Professor of Anthropology, University of Maine. Dr. Newsom stands on the bank of the river.
I'm an archaeologist, and I'm also a member of the Penobscot Nation, and Penobscot people are indigenous to Maine. I opted to go into this career because there were no indigenous archaeologists in the state of Maine. I do archaeology with and for indigenous peoples instead of on and about, and so that is a little different approach.
The Schoodic Institute website shows an image of workers wearing yellow vests on the shore. This is followed by activity from archaeological sites.
I opted to apply for a Second Century Stewardship grant in order to explore the archaeology of Acadia National Park. And Acadia is home to roughly 24 indigenous archaeological sites, and many of them were excavated in the 70s and 80s, and little analysis of the material culture has occurred. They've been locked away in storage for decades.
Photos of stone projectile points, bear's teeth, ceramic sherds, and a bird bone flute appear.
The material culture, the records, soil samples, all of these things. And I felt like this was a good opportunity to use those previously excavated collections in order to understand how Native people or Indigenous people of Maine engaged with Acadia prior to European contact.
A photo of an eroding bank near the water line.
You know, we're losing these sites at a very rapid rate due to sea level rise. And in order to understand how to manage or steward those spaces, we need to know what's there. And you can't know what's there if you haven't done the analysis.
Images of various projectile points followed by graduate students in the field.
Within the scope of the Second Century Stewardship, I have 2 Indigenous graduate students who are working with me. And, you know, it does my heart good to have them here because, you know, for many years, I was the only Indigenous archaeologist in Maine, and now I have multiple students from Maine's tribal communities interested in doing this work. So they're doing the bulk of the analysis on the stone tools right now, and they're excited. And, you know, I'm excited for them because they're asking interesting and important questions for Indigenous communities.
Images of a dog's jawbone, ceramic sherds, and handmade beads appear.
So when we started this project, one idea that I had was to, okay, let's look to Indigenous languages as ways to help us analyze some of the material culture. And so as part of that, the students that are working with me are actually trying to describe some of the materials using Indigenous words.
A photo of items with Indigenous words and their meanings appears.
And so, for example, the word for pot happens to be animate in Passamaquoddy, which is one of the Wabanaki communities. And so when you begin to look at it that way, that the pot is actually alive, that changes how you think about that piece of material culture within the role of that society. In another area that I'm working, we have the Midden Minders Initiative, which is a citizen science initiative that has opportunities for volunteers to help us monitor the erosion of archaeological shell middens.
Views of the river bank from the water followed by views of shells on the beach.
And shell middens or shell heaps are deposits of shell that people have been depositing in Maine for 5,000 years. The problem is, though, these places are eroding very, very rapidly. And we don't have a good handle on how fast they're eroding or what we're losing. And so citizen scientists can help us to measure the shoreline, to determine, you know, just how fast or how many meters per year we're losing. All of those questions are important so that we know where to prioritize our work.
Photos of active archaeological sites.
I do think that reconstructing our past environments through shell heap science can actually help us think about how we can live differently so that we can create a better future for our children and grandchildren. Native people in Maine lived sustainably for 12,000 years.
Images of tooth and bone fragments and a projectile point. Next, a photo of Bonnie Newsom with Secretary Holland, Suzanne Greenlaw, and David Shaw.
If we can target in on some of those lessons and have Acadia convey that to their visitors, then perhaps Indigenous history will achieve a little more prominence.
Another important recent interaction with Bonnie was a visit by Interior Secretary Deb Haaland to Acadia Park for an event that included a sunrise ceremony with Wabanaki musicians and cellist Yo-Yo Ma.
Wijuke mine, wajigisi wijuke mo gich Wabanaki, nagapside damas kichinog.
The performers stand in a large meadow. Next, internet articles about the park.
Congratulations to Dr. Bonnie Newsom for her important work, including several recent publications that highlight the significance of archaeological research and storytelling from the perspective of Indigenous peoples.
Words appear. We hope to change not only public perception, but also to reconnect Wabanaki people to our ancestral past through an Indigenous archaeology lens. Dr. Bonnie Newsom. This paper represents a sea change in the way knowledge about archaeological science is created, managed and disseminated. Rebecca Cole-Will, Resource Management Program Manager, Acadia National Park. Kevin Schneider, Superintendent of Acadia National Park, stands in front of the park's headquarters. He's wearing a tan ranger's uniform.
Bonnie's cutting-edge research is critical to us as park managers, but it's also critical in welcoming Indigenous communities back to their homeland here at Acadia National Park. Thanks to Second Century Stewardship for making this important research possible.
The logos from the opening screens of the video reappear. An older bespectacled man with white hair and a suit coat stands next to a line of flowering bushes and trees. Title: E.O. Wilson, University Research Professor Emeritus at Harvard University.
Well, I think that it's one of the best ideas I've ever heard because obviously it combines all of the things I care about the most, which is parks, science, students, scholarship, public support of education and science. Let it roll.
An older man with thinning gray hair wearing a suit and tie in an interview. Words appear. Alan Alda, the Alan Alda Institute for Communicating Science.
What a great idea to combine the beauty of nature with the beauty of science. I think the science related to a park is just as awesome as the park itself, and I hope every visitor can realize that.
Images of projectile points and other artifacts appear on the screen over the image of a rising sun. Credits: a film by David E. Shaw. Video and images: David E. Shaw, Dr. Bonnie Newsom, Acadia National Park, Rhonda Wanzer. Thank you, Dr. Bonnie Newsom.